The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
This is News Talk.
Well, hello there. So a 4-0 draw in 9 between Manchester United and Liverpool. We'll talk to Mark Lawrenson, and Miguel Delaney as well is with us this evening after 9 o'clock. Andy Dunn is on Monday Night Rugby. Irish Rugby needs to rethink its attitude to the number 9 position, is something we'll be discussing with Andy. That's his theory as opposed to mine. So Andy Dunn on the way after 8 o'clock. Paddy Agnew will be talking Serie A. The Milan clubs back top of the table, positions 1 and 2. Juve are in 5th spot all of a sudden. Inter beat them 2-0 last night, so we'll check in with Paddy, see what's going on. Tara Sullivan from the Boston Globe, she was with us last week, really good on the NFL action, where we're now down to the final 4. Tom Brady does it again. 53106 is the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. Richie McCormack, hello to you.
Happy Monday, Joe.
Happy Monday to you. Adrian Barry, hello.
Joe, Richie, how you doing?
Very well. So another 0-0 to look forward to on Sunday at Old Trafford this time, Adrian.
Yeah. United fans must have been delighted, Joe.
Go on.
I mean, I think that United fans really had to have been delighted. I think Solskjaer himself could barely disguise his delight about it afterwards, despite coming out with the usual kind of cliches. But I thought it was a pretty mature performance out of that United team. They're I mean, what are they in the general pantheon of United teams? Maybe sort of in the very much more in the average direction when you consider some of the teams and squads players that have been through there. I think that it's, albeit an underwhelming and understrength Liverpool team, somewhat of a mature performance. Rode out that first 20-30 minutes, came into it to the point where, particularly towards the end of the game, you really thought they were going to go and nick it. Yeah. And any day that United team get something from Anfield at the minute, I think they have to be happy with.
No, that's probably true. And if Bruno Fernandes had taken his chance or Pogba had taken his chance, then you may well be describing it in the masterclass category. As it went, Solskjaer's been accused of not going for it a bit more when a very vulnerable Liverpool were there. I don't know, Rich, did you get to see much of it?
Yeah, I wouldn't have called Liverpool necessarily vulnerable, because the amount of possession that they had and the amount of chances that they could have created themselves kind of bears out the fact that they're probably the stronger of the two sides. United very much had their chances. Shows you what a top class keeper can do when you have someone like Alisson to prevent those chances laid on from Fernandes and from Paul Pogba. What Liverpool are missing is the zip that was there throughout the last 2 years in particular, and that's not necessarily down to injuries. Some of it is down to the introduction of Thiago. I know Nathan on commentary yesterday, and indeed this morning on OTB AM, was really impressed with Thiago, and that everything he does is really silky and classy and neat and tidy and all that. But the fact that everything now goes through him, and he takes a touch or two more than your average Liverpool midfielder might have done in the past, means they're not getting the ball from back to front as quickly as they did before, which was their main danger, and pretty much how they put sides away pretty early on in a lot of games over the course of the last 2 seasons. They're also suffering from the fact that they don't have the regular centre-half partnership. That means that they're playing defensively anyway, 5 or 10 yards deeper than they would be used to doing. The diagonal balls that Virgil van Dijk was fond of pinging towards Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold aren't there anymore. So Liverpool, through a combination of new personnel and injuries, have really managed to dull their blade a little bit over the course of the last few months.
Yeah, the balance is ever so slightly off. It's not surprising when you literally have your 2 best midfielders in Fabinho and Henderson playing in defence. So suddenly Thiago with Henderson and Fabinho is a very different prospect. It does seem as if Matip is going to be back now, which will re-release Henderson back into midfield. And maybe Robertson and Alexander-Arnold, to be fair, the latter slightly out of form anyway, but maybe they feel a bit more comfortable pushing forward and offering a bit more in the way we've seen over the last 2 years. But there's no doubt Firmino's off, Salah's off, Mane's doing okay, I guess. This is the first time a Jurgen Klopp side has failed to score in 3 consecutive league matches since 2006 in the Bundesliga. So, I mean, that's quite something. 3 games, no goals.
Yeah, that kind of forward line and the way they play are always going to be off if they're not getting the ball that they're used to receiving. And they have been used to receiving a certain type of ball at a certain type of pace over the last 2.5, 3 years. Perhaps even longer now at a couple of them. And if that's not happening, the case in point was the Southampton game, whereby Southampton, through the fact that Liverpool were playing deeper and the fact that Alexander-Arnold himself wasn't playing well, managed to cut him off entirely, and that just completely shut off an avenue of attack for Liverpool that would usually be there. And the Liverpool forwards are having to come deeper to try and win the ball, and with that they're coming up against a couple of more lines of defence to try and break down. So it's no wonder really that they're going to find a little bit of frustration in their attempts to find goals. As you said, like, Henderson going back into midfield is going to make a huge difference, but I would have a word in Thiago's ear. I know his passing completion percentages and all that is really, really good. It's excellent. But you have to find a nice balance with the way and the quickness that they can get the ball from defence to attack. That has been lost somewhat. And I think some of it, not all of it, I'm not blaming him entirely, but some of it has been lost by the fact that he needs 2-3 touches, find his way around. That gives that defence that they're playing against, whoever it is, United, Southampton, Man City, a chance to regroup, a chance to reform. And it ended up, he had Luke Shaw yesterday had a fantastic game at left back for United. I don't think that should go unnoticed. Lindelof, pardon me, had a really good game as well. So, yeah, the United defence really put to the pin in their collar, but I managed to come out of it shining.
Yeah, they did. Mark Lawrenson's going to join us this hour. Miguel Delaney's on the way after 9. I saw a tweet yesterday, Adrian, wondering if there was a red button option to turn off the Mika Richards, Roy Keane routine. I was in here in studio.
That was Miguel's, yeah.
Yeah, it was Miguel's, so I didn't get to enjoy in full. I was in here, obviously, for Off the Ball. We had commentary. Are you enjoying the double act?
I love it. And by the way, I would just one thing on that previous conversation. That is, it's an excellent point that I don't think is made enough of. It's always about whatever Liverpool have lost in defence and how ably or otherwise Henderson and Fabinho, to be fair, very well have been able to cope with that, but not so much about the loss of them from midfield, which I think is a salient point and I think a big reason for a lot of their failings. I love the combo, I have to say. Absolutely love it. I think that Mika Richards is bringing something to Roy Keane that nobody else has really managed to. Is it a bit banter-tastic? It probably is, but like, it's Roy Keane, so it's it comes ready-made with authenticity and credibility, and at the heart of it, Mika Richards is effectively just winding him up. Like, if you follow Mika Richards on Instagram, for example, he'll give you a little bit of a Insta story about what's going on with himself and Roy before games. I think it's great. It's nothing to be like. It's a bit sort of taking the joy out of it a little bit to be saying. Yeah. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, I kind of enjoy it, I have to say. I enjoy it because I think it's blossomed naturally. I don't think it was like they got together beforehand and say, let's do this double act. I think Mika Richards genuinely found himself bouncing off Roy and felt more comfortable to put it up to Roy. And I mean, there's always a danger, especially in the social media age when they're getting great feedback, that they're going to milk it for every drop it's worth, and they will overdo it at times. But in the main, if you think Keane on television, holding your own with him, Gary Neville can do it because they've been around each other for the best part of 20 years. Carragher's established, he can do it. Although he's had some wobbles with Roy, I mean, not least when they picked their own, or their combined Liverpool United XI. And Souness obviously can hold his own with anyone. But after that, like, people you can put with Roy who'll challenge him, who'll have a go with him, who'll laugh in his face, are quite limited. And Richards, in fairness to him, will more than have a go at Keane, which makes for
Ian
good
Wright's
TV.
the only other person
Wright,
I've thought of that did the same. They're joining together for ITV during the last couple of major championships has been a similar dynamic, let's say, to what Richards has done with Keane, whereby Wright would have done the thing that Richards has done, where he says he's not like this off camera. He didn't say that before. He's being grumpy. He's playing this up, and that, like, almost humanising Keane is something that's probably necessary and saves us to the other degree of Roy Keane trending, because a lot of people are saying, what would Roy Keane say about this, which is another story entirely.
Yeah, the reluctant Roy Keane smile at Mika ribbing him is not, it's not the worst TV. But I mean, we'll be sick of it in a year. They'll become self-aware reality TV contestants by the end.
They already are.
2021.
Like, you said it's not engineered, and it's not. It's blossomed naturally, and all that.
It did naturally blossom
to a degree. But then we're having the producers in Sky are quite clearly aware of the outside impression of all this, and they will put them together at every available opportunity, because hey, it's more social media hits, it's more clicks on the Twitter links, and come subscribe to our channels.
Hey, look, if it works, it works. That's why Barry's on the Newsround. You know what I'm saying?
I a bit like Barry on the Newsround. Mika Richards has taken to punditry brilliantly. He's sitting in the company of Roy Keane and Graham Souness, players who've had 40 times the career that he ever had. and he's totally comfortable, and he's been a real breath of fresh air about it, I have to say.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy to go into that environment, and he's done it in a ballsy enough way. I'll chat to Miguel about it later on and see what it is about it that maybe is not floating his boat so much. Joe, I'm a City fan. What a turnaround, says Jerry in Louth. Amazing performance. Pep must be very happy. Game in hand. Aguero to come back. We were 15th at one stage. We are now in the title race. Villa on Wednesday. And I think Villa is about their hardest game until they play Liverpool. Yeah, I mean, to be more exact about the state of play in the Premier League, yes, Man United are on top, but maybe a fuller, more accurate reflection is Man City are 2 points off the top with the game in hand. So suddenly they're coming up so nicely on the rails. Liverpool are the new Leicester City, devastating for a season, but one-dimensional, and now they found their level, says Ross and Selfridge. Come on.
Joe.
Come on.
Joe, do you
Man United fan, is it?
Do you think, Joe, that United fans think that that United have a chance of winning this thing?
No, not really. No.
They like being in the conversation.
Yeah, it's a good run, but everybody knows the bubble's going to burst at some point.
Well, I mean, I think they like being 12 points better off 18 games in than they were last season, and so for the first time in a while, a genuine sense of improvement. But I think anyone who watches football is very aware Liverpool are 18 points worse off than they were last season, and that's ultimately what's keeping United in the mix. So they can keep pace with this Liverpool and, well, I was about to say this Man City, but increasingly this Man City are a bit scarier. So I think it's a pleasant surprise that the others have fallen back so much.
I don't think we should necessarily read into what, like, I know we don't want to get bogged down in the cliche. We can't read into the table the way it is now. But like, you think back to a month ago before Spurs went to Anfield, we were talking about Tottenham being potential title contenders and how badly they've fallen away in a month. Like, this table and this season is that mad and that chaotic that the situation we're talking about now, whereby City, and by all rights, they are right up there and they played brilliantly over the course of the last month. This could change like very, very quickly over the course of the next 6
That's United, Richie, are all those things you've just said. Mad as a box of frogs.
To Solskjaer's credit, he has got them in a decent mindset. Like McTominay and Fred had the holy hell kicked out of them for the first half hour yesterday. But they stay at it. You know, they're tenacious. There's a good attitude in that team now, and there really wasn't for a long time. I still think at times Paul Pogba, out of possession, will take the first opportunity to say, oh, my word, I can't do any more. I'm out of this particular passage of play, whereas the others will work that bit harder to get themselves back into it. But there is a really good attitude about them now, which maybe wasn't the case for a time, and that's going a long way for them, especially when, like, geez, they've got talent. They spent, 450 million under Solskjaer with such low expectations. It's like these paupers are doing okay, you know, they've got like the highest wage bill in the league practically.
They still need to find that balance between, as you mentioned, good attitude and quality, and they need a midfield that isn't going to get kicked out of the first half at Anfield, or the first half hour at Anfield, like Fred and McTominay did yesterday. Like, they performed pretty well, the two of them. I'm not criticising them at all. But they need somebody who are 2 or 3 rungs above them on the ladder, because that's what's going to have United actually moving from being in the conversation. I know, Van de Beek and all, But you know what I mean. It's a case of they're clearly trying to still settle Van de Beek into the side in the same way that we should have mentioned that Liverpool tried to settle Fabinho in his first year. I'd imagine their situations are kind of similar, but they do need throughout the pitch 2 or 3 extra players in midfield especially, and then in defence, that can have them genuinely contending, not just in the conversation, not just aren't we better off by 12 points this season than we were last, but to actually be genuine title contenders. There's still a need to strengthen that squad. Yeah, for sure. Somebody says, any thoughts on Klopp maybe having burnt out the team? They look jaded, intensity is gone. Same thing happened in Dortmund, says Brian in Cork. I mean, that will be thrown at him if this continues, although it's such a strange year. Maybe that feels a touch unfair. And they need Jota as well.
I think that structurally, when you look at what's going on, like, you don't have to look too far beyond that, do you? Injuries-wise and the tweaks that he's had to make on the team. Very difficult to judge Jurgen Klopp, say that he's burnt out the team. Everybody's knackered. Everybody's knackered. This affects Liverpool against Sheffield United. When he's without 2, 3, 4 of his first choice centre-backs and having to suck his best 2 midfielders back to cover those positions, I don't think you have to look too far beyond that, to be honest. No, sometimes, I mean, we can overcomplicate things, but you just have to remind yourself, Fabinho and Henderson are playing centre-half right now. So they're patched. Simple game, Joe. By the way, and we should start the news round, I didn't think it was that bad a game. I kind of avoided Twitter for a lot of it, but then I saw people were doing falling asleep gifs and saying it was dreadful. I thought, Adrian, there was danger in the air for both sides. Like, United on the counter-attack, and they created those couple of chances, and
you know, Liverpool always looked threatening without ever creating a clear-cut chance. I didn't feel it was a sterile 0-0 at all.
In patches, it was definitely doze-off territory. I found it. Now, you'd be a purist, Joe. You'd be a football man, so I accept your accept your theory on that. It needed the Fernandes goal to go in, the free kick to go in. It needed a goal at some point to set light to it. I felt that maybe there was a bit, like the cagey word got thrown around a lot yesterday, whether it was cagey or boring, I'm not sure, but it definitely needs something. Definitely didn't take spark in a way that, despite all the factors in terms of being under strength or generally, we're in United's case not sure exactly what sort of team they are, I definitely think that it would have benefited from a goal before half time or something to have the other team chasing it a bit. Like, in a way, maybe they were both happy to get out of there 0-0.
Yeah, possibly, as it went on. Joe, final point. Damien Delaney. Damien and I had a good old debate on Wednesday. Damien Delaney spot on about the need for United to have Fred McTominay in the team at the same time, as in if they could get one player to do the job of the two of them and then a proper bowler in there alongside him, United would have walked that game yesterday, says Michael in Rothgar. Michael, it's funny, Damien Delaney texted me about 3 minutes ago, so I'm now wondering if you're also Damien Delaney, but yes, he did make that point, and it's probably true. Like, Paul Pogba on the right hand side is not the answer. That is, you know, like the last place he wants to play. Even Gary Neville was making the point. Pogba, at least on the left hand side, can cut in on his right foot and be a bit more involved, but stuck out in the right wing is not a good solution, and a part of the problem is they need Fred and McTominay in there, so they can't afford to put Pogba in there at the moment. So, like, there's still lots wrong with Manchester United for sure. Let's kick off the news round. So it is, as ever, with thanks to our good friends at Gillette here on Off the Ball on News Talk. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. Where are you starting, Rich?
With the Emirates, Arsenal can return to the top half of the Premier League table tonight. They entertain a Newcastle side who are without a win in their last 6 league outings. For Arsenal, fairly strong side for them, with Kieran Tierney returning, perhaps crucially for them. Bernd Leno starts in goal. Cedric Suarez, David Luiz, Rob Holding and Kieran Tierney are their back four. In midfield then, Thomas Partey also back in the side alongside Granit Xhaka and Bukayo Saka. And then Emile Smith-Rowe is in behind Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Alexandre Lacazette. For Newcastle, interesting starting 11 from them, pretty much at the front end. Carl Darlow in goal, Emile Kraft, Jamal Lascelles, Kieran Clark, the Republic of Ireland international defender, and Jamal Lewis are at the back for them. In midfield then, Jonjo Shelvey and Matty Longstaff, and trying to make sense of their front four. Miguel Almiron, Joe Linton, Andy Carroll and Callum Wilson. Newcastle seemingly going for it tonight. Kickoff is at 8. Sticking with Arsenal, finally set to lose Mesut Ozil from their wage bill. The former Germany midfielder is in Istanbul to complete a move to Fenerbahce.
Well, not to misquote him, but in effect, Steve Bruce came out after the defeat to Sheffield United and said, we were bloody useless, we were horrific, and I'm switching to a back four, and the players don't want me to switch to a back four. They're comfortable with the back five, and I've gone along with it, but now I'm not anymore. So that's kind of what's going on at Newcastle at the moment, which is pretty interesting. Premier League COVID tests, I guess this is going in the right direction, Richie, from the high of 40 a few weeks ago.
Yeah, 16 from the latest round of tests. Checks were carried out on 3,115 players in the last week, staff included in that as well. The total of confirmed cases is down from 36 in the previous week. Top flight sides have been reminded of COVID-19 protocols recently, including trying to maintain distance during goal celebrations, no swapping shirts and no shaking hands are the other instructions from the Premier League and other football authorities over there.
The people have spoken on Mika Roy. Give me a bit of contrived fun any day of the week. Imagine we have to rely on some of the stiffs who pass for football pundits these days. Not much more entertaining than asking Siri on your phone for football analysis, says Bernard. Somebody else says, anyone that finds fault with Keane and Richards needs to get a life. It's brought an extra spark to the Sky Punditry. It's obvious Keane is playing along with it, and I reckon he's getting a good laugh out of it too. Yesterday, he said to Richards that he was jealous about the love he was showing for Stones. It was a good laugh. Souness was laughing at it too. Mika, a class act. And Ferg, nobody is more relieved to have Richards in studio than Keane. Keane doesn't have the crack with other pundits, and if he started doing that with them now, it would look contrived. At least with Richards, Keane has a chance to show he's not just a grumpy sod, says Ferg. I think that was your point, Adrian, wasn't it? That, like, if Keane wants to remain a 3D figure, he can't just be Angry Roy in studio the whole time.
And you know, the context for all of this is, remember Ian Wright was on one of our Cadbury shows last year, and he was talking about, the conversation came up about Roy Keane and how seriously or otherwise he took his punditry when you saw him go off script a bit, let's say. was that, how contrived was it? And Ian Wright was like, listen, this guy takes his punditry incredibly serious, and you can take it to the bank that anything he's saying on air, he means. So when you take that as the context, and I haven't the foggiest whether he's right or not, but he's somebody who's worked alongside Roy Keane for a number of years, and he knows his football. So I'm going to take it as read that that's the case. So when you take it like that, and then you consider the Mika Richards crack that they're having, like, great, bring it on.
And there is definitely room for a bit of crack, isn't there, around games? Like, we're all there for entertainment. I mean, it shouldn't feel like schoolwork to have to get constant analysis and often points repeated over and over again that we all know anyway because we're watching all the games. Like, there is room for, well, let's just have a bit of fun because we're about to watch a football match and there's nothing that important happening here.
Well, the thing about it is as well... Sorry, go on, Adrian.
Go on, Richie, no, go on.
Yeah, the thing about it, it's like something Rory Smith pointed out on Twitter last week. I think we mentioned it on the show too. It's the fact that every game is now available, that people are coming to the realization that not every game probably should be available, that not every game is your 9-goal thriller, thrill-a-minute, fantastic football at both ends of the pitch. A lot of games, unfortunately, are boring. So there probably needs to be some kind of light relief back in the studio or in the commentary box to distract from that a little bit.
From broadcasters, more so in the UK, you get like banter layered upon banter, and it doesn't work. And like maybe Mika and Roy become that in a couple of years, but they're not that now. So like, enjoy it.
So good news on Breed Stack. We heard the word spinal, and that's never a good word to hear. So it seems like she's going to make a full recovery, Rich.
She's been released from hospital after suffering a neck injury while making her debut for the Greater Western Sydney Giants in a pre-season game against the Adelaide Crows. The 11-time All-Ireland winner with Cork was taken to hospital by paramedics who were following spinal protocols. Scans revealed that Stack suffered a stable fracture of the C7 vertebrae and no injury, thankfully and crucially, to the surrounding nerves. But she did not require surgery. She'll now wear a neck brace short-term, released from hospital. Yeah, we wish her well. She was on the show with us just before Christmas and really looking forward to the move to Australia. Cora Staunton had sort of, got on to her and they'd made it happen and she was very excited to go down there. So it's a real pity this has happened, but thankfully, big picture, her health is okay. Neil Lennon then?
By the way,
sorry.
By the way, I will say on that it seems like because certainly when I looked at it initially, I thought, it must have been some sort of an innocuous challenge. She must have landed awkwardly. By all accounts, that was not the case. And there's an ongoing investigation into the tackle that wound her up in this position. So it'll be interesting to see what happens out of that too.
Oh, is that right? Because it was a training match.
Yeah, it was a pre-season sort of a warm-up. Yeah. But yeah, no, quite a dangerous tackle by all accounts. I read an account of it earlier on, and seems to be a pretty horrific tackle. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, well that changes the complexion of things a bit.
Yeah, well, hopefully, as you said, like everything's headed in the right direction. But there is an ongoing investigation into the one single player who was quite reckless, it seems, in the challenge. Yes, we'll see.
Right. Neil Lennon then, more good news.
Yeah, Neil Lennon's confirmed that another Celtic player has tested positive for COVID-19. Lennon, his assistant John Kennedy, and 13 players were forced to sit out their last 2 Scottish Premiership matches. The group were required to self-isolate following Christopher Julian's positive COVID result on their arrival back into Scotland from their much criticised trip to Dubai. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon led the questioning of Celtic's trip, but Lennon is unhappy at how it's subsequently been portrayed.
A jolly is like, it's not a stag do. It wasn't 1830. Even though it's been portrayed like that, we went out there with the best intentions. The lads had one day off. They got into Dubai at 7 in the morning and they're entitled to a bit of downtime. It's not as if they were doing a conga in a dressing room, dancing the baccarat, or travelling up and down a train journey from London to Glasgow with COVID. So I think we've been harshly treated. Well, I want to apologise to our supporters for the fallout. It shouldn't be Peter that had to do it. It should have been me. It was my decision, along with the backroom team, the medical staff, sports science, to go with the best intentions for the benefit of the team going forward for the second half of the season. Unfortunately, it's not worked out that way. We've had one positive test, but that shows that our protocols were very good out of a group of 60-odd people. So I think the fallout from this has been, way too much, and a bit of bullying going on. And we've been held to a far higher standard than any other club.
You see, I still don't think they should have gone, but I think he does have a few points there which are fair. Anyone also think, it's gone a bit over the top?
I think that I don't really, Joe, to be honest. I can't say I've been following it with enough detail to be able to stand over that wholly. But I do have a view that, like Neil Lennon, for a start, as a manager under massive pressure in Celtic, and now he's coming out to support, obviously, the CEO of the company, and I think that plays out well. I think that, like he's talking about, the whole squad is negative bar 2 players. I think that's remarkable, and I think it totally blows out of the water the way the training camp's been portrayed by the media and certain pundits and government officials as well. Like, I think that, like, why are these training camps necessary? That's the fundamental point. Like, he's saying this is all fine. He's like making a bit of a joke out of this, actually, when he's talking about the 18 to 35s and the conga and all this sort of stuff. No, I think that they shouldn't have travelled.
Well,
sorry, go on, yeah.
On the 1830 thing, there is a broader point there, and I did cut it out for time. And because a lot of it was pointed in one direction, he basically took major umbrage with what Andy Walker had said on Sky, which was that phrase he used at the start of the clip there, going on a jolly. And he went off for another minute or so at Sky's reporter, basically demanding an apology from Andy Walker over the language that he'd used to describe the trip to Dubai. But to Adrian's point, there's no need to go on a trip like this during the middle of a pandemic. They can point towards the sports science and the fact that it's worked well for them in the past, and that in November they got clearance from the Scottish government. The optics of it, whether they're on the gargle or not, are terrible at the moment, and they don't need to do it. They're terrible in a wider societal point of view. They're terrible from a Celtic point of view because they're in woeful form. And if they think that a trip to Dubai is suddenly going to reel in a 20-point gap or whatever it is over Rangers now at the minute, they've another thing coming. Pretty much any way you look at this, it was a bad idea.
Oh, I agree with all that. I feel the picture of Lennon and Scott Brown having the beer has been blown up maybe a touch too much. Like, they had one day off, they were training the rest of the days. Protocol was followed to the extent that they only had one positive case amongst 60, which could easily happen in Scotland. So I don't think it was a total piss take, but I do think they shouldn't have gone for optics reasons, for sure. Time is coming against us. Tyke Furlong. Ireland are not going to do much. Well, maybe that's overstating things, but they'll do a hell of a lot better in the Six Nations if Furlong is a part of it, and we're getting to crunch time.
Yeah, there's concern regarding his fitness ahead of the Six Nations. Now, Robin McBride, the Leinster scrum coach, has done some work to kind of allay those worries this evening, saying that he would be okay to be dropped into Ireland duty, but he remains on the sideline with a calf injury and hasn't been considered for Saturday's Pro 14 derby with Munster. James Lowe, Gary Ringrose, they'll both have respective groin and jaw injuries monitored ahead of the game at Thomond Park, but Sean Cronin and Kieran Frawley are fit for the trip to Limerick. On the other side of the ball, Dave Kilcoyne is back in contention for Munster, as are Jack O'Donoghue, Jean Klein, and the other name has escaped me, but either way, they've got 4 players back Munster do at the moment for that game at Thomond Park come Saturday afternoon. Okay, very good. Can we just finish with this tennis story, because it's obviously gripping the world right now. These 74 players locked in their hotel room and releasing videos which vary on the moaning spectrum to completely out of touch with the world, right all the way up to, I can see how it's tough. I have some sympathy for you. So the tennis situation down in Melbourne. Do you want the audio with this or not? I don't mind. You tell me. It's up to your man in the box there. He'll be giving out to you for time. But Novak Djokovic was branded a tool by fellow pro Nick Kyrgios today. The former world number one allegedly presented Tennis Australia chief Craig Tiley with a list of demands ahead of the Australian Open. Overseas players are quarantining, having arrived into Melbourne on chartered flights for the Grand Slam. Djokovic wanted players, amongst other things, moved to private houses with access to tennis courts. But the Victoria Premier, Daniel Andrews, said players knew what was awaiting them before they arrived into Australia.
People are free to provide lists of demands, but the answer is no. And that was very clearly laid out beforehand. So the notion that there's been any change, the notion that people weren't briefed, I think that argument really has no integrity whatsoever. And don't just take my word for it. You've got other players who I think on social media and in other forums have made it very clear that they were clear on the rules. Yeah, a couple broke out over the weekend and then were warned they'd face deportation if they did it again. Slow life that I have. I did watch the full Vanessa Sierra video this morning. She is girlfriend to Bernard Tomic. She was complaining that, she doesn't wash her own hair because it's just not something she does. So she was showing off how terrible her hair had become because obviously there was no professional to come into the room and wash her hair. But to be fair,
Yeah. To be fair, and this is not, you know, I obviously it was a ridiculous first world complaint. The tone of the whole video was not like, this is a disgrace, like, how dare they do this to us, I'm a princess, this is, you know, and that's how it's kind of been portrayed with the headline. I'd say she's going to be horrified with that. Like, look, don't get me wrong, it's a little bit, you know, and the food's cold, but like at the same time she's also saying, we're stuck in this bed for the next 2 weeks, we're not even going to be able to change our bed sheets, you know, so, and she wasn't saying it's a disgrace or anything, it was just like, here's what life's like. I'd say she's getting a very hard time right now. And it is a tough thing to be in a hotel room for 2 weeks. Like, no balcony, no real fresh air. I mean, it's no crack, Adrian, just the two of them stuck in a tiny hotel room. All right. No empathy. No empathy here in this conversation, I hear.
Listen, I would be with the Australian Prime Minister, and I think that, listen, they're doing all right for themselves. They're travelling around the world to get mostly handsomely, particularly at that level of Bernard Tomic, rewarded for it. Did she have other things to say about that herself and Bernard they don't necessarily know each other that well? Did I read a quote?
Wasn't in the video that I watched now.
All right, because I'm not going to repeat the thing that I think I heard on the basis that maybe it was parody, but
okay. Well then, maybe don't. Yeah.
Anyway,
she's getting destroyed anyway. That's the short version.
I actually think there's a lot of similarities. And look, if she was, I saw the clip of her talking about her hair, and I have to say I left that with the very one-dimensional view on it. Maybe there's more 3D than that. But I think there's a lot of similarities with the Celtic thing. I think that there are optics at play here. There's a country who's getting to grips with the same thing that everybody else is getting to grip with. So zip it and get on with it would be my view, Joe.
No, for sure. I think in hindsight that might have been the best thing to do. But stuck in a hotel room. I mean, we got the full tour. It went on for a long time, this video. I mean, I had to go and get
We need to get you out of lockdown, clearly.
I know, I had to get some fresh air after it. Right, I gotta go. Adrian Barry, thank you. Richie McCormack, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Up next, Mark Lawrenson.
The news round on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made